Good afternoon. I saw everybody sit up a little straighter when the bosses walked out. Just, We'll see how many of you are digging into your BlackBerry halfway through. The lights aren't so bright that we can't see you, so just know that. We're not companion media up here. I was surprised when I came here. I read but did not see Mary Berner's speech. But it was a little bit of a barn burner, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of like a General Patton, Howard Beale type thing. I expect to see holes in the back of the room where people just went through walls and went out there to take over the world. I am, of course, deeply excited to spend time with these captains and captainesses of industry. David Carey of Hearst, I think you know, Tom Hardy of Meredith, Joe Rip of Time Inc., Maria Rodale of Rodale Inc., and of course Bob Sauerberg of Condé Nast. It's nice to be up here with people who've done amazing things through very complicated times, and to be here with this much throw weight. But there's a saying, I think it's a Thai saying, that when the elephants grapple, the grass gets trampled. And so I'm a little worried about, we had to call security twice in the green room. I'm not going to go into a lot of specifics, but let's just say Maria plays pretty big for her size back there. I promised these guys that we would start with an easy question, and that the questions would get more insouciant and nasty as we went. So, Bob, here's my idea for our first question. You're familiar with these guys' companies, right?
Not really. Really not.
They are in the magazine business, which, according to Mary Berner, is a growing industry full of nothing but upside.
Boy, Mary's got it so right.
That's true.
It's really amazing.
That's true. I want some of what she's having. I work in the newspaper business, so of course. Can you think of something one of these companies has that you wish you had more of, or that you admire and respect in what they do?
In their brands, I think, what, we all love the brands that we have, so I'm probably not going to go and just pick a brand that I like. But I tell you one thing.
Oh, you could.
I could, but I think that we would all go to the Peoples and the Cosmos because we're all business people looking to, make a ton of money. But you know what? What I respect the most is the integrity of everyone in this that we work with. We know each other, we care about each other, we come to the table trying to do great work every day. And I respect that so much, and I think it's so important for our industry to have all the leaders. I know everybody for a long time, and Joe for 5 minutes, we're best friends already. But I think that's really important for our consumers and for advertisers to know that we are really going to do as great work for them and all the things all the issues that we're up against.
Maria, is there something in one of these companies where you point your employees at and say, we should do more of that?
Well, I actually have said over and over to my team over the last few years, our job is not to look at our wonderful, friendly, highly respected competitors, but to really look at our customers and say, what do they want? And where are they responding? And oftentimes that's less about other magazines and more about other, whether it's digital or events or startups. So I have tons of respect for everybody here, but we try to stay focused on what's really important to us, which is our customer. And
is anybody going to bite on this question? Should I just?
I do love People Magazine.
Okay.
Personally, I like to read it.
Yeah, I'd like to have an ATM in my lobby that just kicked out hundreds of millions of dollars too.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Joe.
I've been in the industry for 6 weeks. It's way too early for me to covet my neighbor's assets. But nevertheless, being back into the industry, I think there's so many things we as an industry can start doing together. We all have great assets, great brands, but we can start thinking about investing in technologies together, thinking about ways to really drive the industry forward, because the reality is we're not really competing with each other. The competition is coming from the other sources of distractions for our readers. I like to refer to those consumers formerly known as readers, because they're moving on to other places, they're doing other things. And so really as an industry, pulling together and saying, how can we make sure that we continue to attract the audiences that we have for years and entertain them and delight them wherever they may be. So I look at it and say there's lots we can do together despite the fact that we do compete on some level.
Tom, are you going to help me out at all here?
Well, I do agree with Joe that my experience in the business has been that we spent way too many years competing against ourselves. And clients, if you get on a client call now, they don't want to hear that your magazine's better than another magazine. They want to hear how you're going to move their business forward. But to your question on what do I admire, Bob and I worked together. I had the privilege of working at Condé Nast for a few years, and I think you can't have two more divergent business models than Meredith and Condé Nast. I always say that if you could cut them in half and glue them together, you'd have this really powerful machine. But
That's a good idea.
well,
Maybe next year we'd only have four CEOs.
But it's
It worked for banking, it worked for airlines.
It almost was.
It almost was.
It
right.
almost was, right?
I actually
Never
have
said
one of those mail order reverend degrees, and if you want to get married right now, you too.
We're ready.
David, you worked at Condé Nast. Can you think of anything one of these companies does where it's like, if we could just nail it like they nail it? I'm not giving up on this question no matter what. Somebody's going to help me out.
I'll help you out, and I won't. First, these are our business partners as well. Partnerships are a big deal at Hearst. We have a joint venture with Condé Nast in the UK. We publish and are launching women's health magazines around the world. We have a joint venture with Time Inc. in Mexico. We work very closely with Meredith on their circulation strategies. So that said, of these companies of which you could admire so much, I love the Rodale pure play around kind of wellness and kind of one note to hit lots of different ways. And I think all of us run large-scale companies from small publications to big, but I do admire the sense of purpose of Rodale around a very specific point of view and target.
Thank you so much. That's
And
very
you
sweet.
find, and the thing is, it doesn't just stop at magazines. It just becomes a brand that you guys can market and remarket over any number of platforms. One of the things that, regardless of how much fire Mary breathes, and God bless her, and there are enough sparks left over. Didn't this place start on fire today or something?
Just a test.
It's just we could say Rome is burning. There's that. Or the industry is on fire, whichever metaphor you'd like. It is a fact of absolute life, and I think Jonah flicked at this earlier, that the incoming cohort of consumers, and you're all handsome young people, so you're going to have to deal with them. You won't be done before they're your next. It's a fact of life that their prism on the world is about this big, and so. We know for a fact that a lush, visually oriented medium doesn't play that well on there. And one of the things that doesn't fit very well on that little screen is a business model. Doesn't fit very good. So when you look at mobile, it has to feel a little threatening, no? Jump right in, guys.
Well,
I think,
Yeah.
there's no question.
You promised me you wouldn't be all that polite.
We and everyone else are experimenting, but I think in the last year, we've seen much greater traction of how to monetize mobile, how to use mobile as an on-ramp to paid and to drive paid circulation in terms of tablets. And so I think that, Facebook maybe got there first and you saw those headlines, but I think this is rapidly changing. I think, for us and most everyone else, more than 50% of our audience is on mobile, even higher on the weekends when they're away from desktops. And I think we're also using that traffic to point to a lot of other businesses. And so I think all of us are seeing success in that area.
You gotta give Apple, excuse me, you gotta give Apple credit too. I mean, This iOS is a tremendously high fidelity environment. And so our content, whether it's mobile web or in our apps, really displays great. And the potential for this to be a long-term two-revenue stream business is high. I mean, everything they've done with iOS 7 is to reduce friction, fingerprinting. You're going to see more and more of that, which are all great technologies for what we really do. Now, we've got a lot of work.
That one thing you probably should stick in there is they announced yesterday that their operating system is going to be free. You know, they're now, that's an effort to kill. Microsoft is standing at the sort of a cliff of PCs, and they want to get a boot in Microsoft's back end. But I mean, that's a fairly, if they're going to continuously update iOS from here on out, that's a pretty stable platform for publishers.
Stable, less friction, and you know, clearly the bigger format is easier for us to do our thing. You know, but I think that we all have to get better too at the smaller formats.
They're kind of rugged business partners, though.
I think the exciting thing is, yeah, we're stuck with that, is that it's a huge opportunity for creativity and innovation and testing and trying new things and, you know, diversifying business models. And, you know, there's just no one answer anymore. There's multiple answers, and, you know, you've got to kind of be willing to experiment and, you know, be fearless.
We're all seeing revenues come from video. You know, the video business in.
But you guys, when you guys talk about video and talk about tablet revenue, it's so tiny. I mean, you can talk about percentage increases, but it's not a meaningful part of your business, and isn't going to be anytime soon, is it?
It's not. It's a meaningful part and growing, not compared certainly to the print side of the business. But I look at it as a tremendous opportunity for us for growth. If you look at the video platforms, they're great for short-form video. We're doing over 200 million short-form videos now a year. Probably can get that up to 1 billion in the not-so-distant future. That's not hard to do. The application of these devices, I think what we all need to do as an industry, and I've talked to David about this, is even investing in our digital platforms together, finding ways to make those experiences even more rewarding, more enriching. What we've done in the past as magazines is push content out and not really let the crowds engage with us and debate and talk and go back and forth and share. And if you look at our iPad applications, they don't do a lot of that. It's PDF versions on the iPad or the like, but there's really an opportunity for us to think about creating these immersive experiences where we have the loyal readers that we have that love the content that we produce to engage with us more and more. The one thing we know from looking at our content and the way people interact with it, they love the stuff we produce. We have really good stuff. So if you really want to go and look 10 ways to feed your gerbil, you can go do that. Or you can come back and look at a really great experience for you. And I think if we create those immersive environments for ourselves, where we can capture more of what goes on with the readers, that we can really do quite well. I used the example, I was talking to Rick Stengel the other day about the cover he did. Remember Time Magazine, the woman feeding the 7-year-old kid or whatever he was? There was a tremendous amount of buzz in the media that went on for 2 weeks after that cover went out.
I vomited in my mouth a little bit when I looked at it.
But we didn't capture
Kind of
the
creeped me out.
Yeah, well, it creeped a lot of people out, but it was a great buzz, didn't it? And a lot of people spoke about it. A lot of people interacted about it, but not in our platforms. And so we've got to look forward and say, how do we capture the dialogue? How do we moderate that dialogue that goes on?
But you know, if you talk about, you know, what I guess Jay Rosen is the one who's the people formerly known as the audience. They're programming their own universe. They're the ones, and it's, as you say, not push, but you got to get them to pull. And I'm trying to think about what in your brands is sturdy enough and unique enough to bounce up from the clutter and have people pulling you, because you can't depend on push anymore.
Well, Meredith, I'll give you a great example of that, which we've been really surprised at recently. So, you know, we acquired All Recipes, you know, a year and a half ago, largest food website online, and we didn't know how powerful the brand was, because 85% of the traffic that came to All Recipes was through search, SEO optimized, type in chicken dinner, salad dressing. And we did a test, and we did a newsstand test, and we put that All Recipes logo on one of our SIPs, and it had a 50% lift in sale, and we were astonished. And then we came about and we did some more consumer testing. And here's a website that the median age is 40 years old. The content is user-generated, so it's basically free. We're aggregating it and putting it up as a utility. We did a test this past spring, and we sold 400,000 print subscriptions in 4 weeks. And we're going to give back that content that they're giving us for free, and we're going to charge them for it. Great business model. And the interesting...
And I want to say, I did your blueberry muffins at all recipes in August. Worked out pretty damn great.
Yes, absolutely. But the idea of knowing, you know, if you're going to type something into that box, that search box, you need to be inspired before that. So what we're seeing from all recipes is that people want the content that they can get online curated to them, and let us tell us what's the best out of those hundreds of thousands of recipes.
David,
And,
I've watched...
David, that suggests that, you know, all of us have product development opportunities, and in some cases are rooted by brands that live elsewhere. And so you know that our track record with taking brands that existed in other spaces, first Oprah and then Food Network and HGTV is an example, that in 1 year, 1.3 million circulation, $18 is the entry point in terms of the subscription rate. So you talk about the chance for people to pull it through. The market responds to new products. I mean, consumers are eager for it. And in some cases, they might be bespoke brands that get created, but there's a lot of potential to take brands that have significant audiences, like our cable businesses and like our recipes, and the audience responds very, very fast.
I'm interested in the sort of Esquire re-engineer back out into TV. Yeah. Now you've got some TV assets under control, so maybe maybe you're experiencing, but like you're not playing around. I see it everywhere. I noticed we reviewed it the other day. Yeah. We weren't really super friendly in our review, but we didn't clobber it.
We appreciated the page-and-a-half coverage in the New York Times.
Yes, of course. And we did spell Esquire right, correct. So, no, historically, TV and magazines, right? So why is this going to be different?
Well, two things. We've been talking a lot, of course, about print and digital, but let's keep in mind the most powerful, most profitable platform out there is television. You look at the margins of cable TV companies, and they go from 35% to 60%. And so for us to have worked with NBC to reflag one of their existing channels, which they flipped into the Esquire network, is a huge opportunity, and it's already been accretive to the magazine, that it's already made the magazine, the combination of the network and the product. We're selling subscriptions online. I encounter people often that hadn't really engaged with Esquire in some time, but are now familiar with the network. And so this is a fantastic combination. So maybe easier to go from a big cable network to the magazines like we did with Food Network and HGTV, but NBC has already seen nice traction with going the other direction. And their choice was this. And this is, you know, magazines are, you know, some of the world's most famous, we'll call them medium-sized businesses. Magazines have billion-dollar footprints in terms of consumer awareness, parked on top of, let's call it, a $100 million business. And capturing that value is the opportunity. So when NBC first approached us about how to work together, whether some content or promotion, and I threw out, you should just call it the Esquire channel, and you should put that in your testing. And so they went out and they did, and they found that 10% of those they polled were already aware of the Esquire channel, which did not exist. And so it shows you the permission that consumers give to our brands to enter new spaces. And so when NBC's...
And some of them women too, right? It wasn't just...
From in every direction. So for them, it was an easy decision. They could pick a name off the shelf and spend years giving it value, or they could start with a brand that has enormous equity and on day one, you know, get everyone's attention. And that's what they did. And so I love the fact that that research proved the thesis that the fame and respect among audiences is much larger than the actual media footprints. And that creates all sorts of opportunities for us to fill in.
We live in New York, so we're used to walking around the city and seeing your fine products everywhere that you guys make. And I'm a big magazine geek, and I love the feeling of something significant in my lap that I do believe all that gobbledygook about engagement. I do think that that's a unique media experience, and it's not companion media to me. It's something that I do in a dedicated way. But if if I were in your business, I would snap awake in the middle of the night, probably, and think, holy shit, newsstand is just, it's going away. Our way of making sure, part of the reason Esquire is such a strong brand is just, you go to the airport, you go to the grocery store, boom, 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 there it is. You know what? A lot of that's going away. That channel is just cratering.
I don't think it's going away permanently, and a lot of
The
it's
trend has been pretty clear, though.
right. But I actually live in Pennsylvania, and where I go food shopping, they just redesigned this store, and the magazine section is even bigger. So I think it's cyclical. It's like the internet didn't kill television, and newsstand will come back in a different, better way. And we just have to be creative and innovative about how we reach our customers and where we reach them, and find them in smaller pieces of that marketing pizza.
So David, I spent the last couple of years in private equity. And when you're looking for different companies, you say, what assets do they have? Do they have marketing clout? Do they have customer relationships? Do they have cash flows? Do they have great content? Do they have ability for you to create real value here? When I took this job, people said, well, that's really too bad. Are you sure you know what you're doing? Because you're going to run this company that's really in this troubled industry. I look at this industry and talk about the incredible opportunities we have to reach consumers in so many different ways. In part, Time Inc. has not done that because we've been part of a
Well,
conglomerate.
if I were you, I would have looked at it and say, oh, the last two people got savaged from within. I mean, there's that.
The beauty is I don't care.
But it does bring up the question of, you guys as leaders can point to the hill and say, come on, we're going to take the hill. And you could get to the top of the hill, and and it's happened to people. You turn around, it's nothing but crickets. Nobody's with you.
That's
right.
That is not true. I think I have the smartest people in the magazine industry working for my company. And I guarantee you they're all incredibly excited about the opportunities we have and where we can go forward and how we can really move this industry forward. And we're going to do that. Guarantee that.
And you know what? I think we're all the same way. We're getting up in the middle of the night thinking about the opportunities we have every day to expand our footprints. I mean, it's, thinking just using it in the frame of retail sales, that's not the way to really think about it, is that we've all built our businesses. Our magazine businesses are up to subscription business. Think about it. All the technology companies, to your point, are looking at subscription models to build their business. We have it. We have the best subscription business in the world.
I have 38
And this is a
million
huge asset
subscription
for us to
relationships.
take
I can do something with that.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, what keeps me up at night is not our consumer side of our business. We're about 90% subscriptions, and the business in the history of the company, the consumer side of the business has never been better. Newsstand has its challenges, and I think it's a lot about the wholesaler consolidation.
Wait, slow down on that and explain that to me, because I believe you.
Well, we're a public company. You can look at the numbers, but
No,
to Joe's point,
that's why I believe you.
We have a, and let me tell you, when the recession hit, what kept me up at night, we send out, millions of pieces of direct mail, and you get that report card in about 5 days. You get that email talking about how the campaign is doing. We were planning on down 10% related to the recession, and actually it improved. It went the other way. And I know you could talk about that. People were spending more time at home. They were looking for comfort, what they were doing. But the consumer side of our business, profitability, what we get from the consumer, has never been better in 111 years of the company. We have an advertising problem because there's more places for our advertisers to spend their money. And we've got to do a better job talking about how magazines can deliver sales and ROI to them.
And David, on that point, certainly true for us and I think for most, we've seen renewal rates strengthen in the last several years. And some of that's a combination of data better informing us of who our best customers are. And so we get so much more data than we ever thought possible. And so our direct mail is more targeted, our gift offers are more targeted. And so if you wake up worried about the newsstand, you can go to sleep knowing that your annuitized revenue from consumers, the things that make Netflix so valuable and others, is rock solid.
What I think about if, speaking to Tom's point about the, you know, you have these strong relationship with consumers. To your point, you're getting to know them better, you know, and as Maria said, I don't really care what my peers are doing, I care what my readers think. If you think about the other side of the relationship, it points to the ad business, which is, for a long time, you've had this relationship with the ad buying community, where you didn't really need to explain yourself, you didn't really need to, they had seen that you could perform in the past. And now a lot of times you're up against a robot, you're up against an algorithm, you're up against programmatic buying, where it's taking in numbers and you know, Mary talked about the industry taking putting out better numbers, but in an age of metric-driven, algorithmically derived program buying, don't magazines get clobbered in that world?
I mean, we're having a really great year, and we're doing well in the programmatic buying, but we're also doing well in the programmatic buying. And you know, really, again, it comes back to ideas, integration, creativity, relationships, and you know, I think whether it's with advertising or with consumers, you know, it does require being open to new ways of thinking and really looking at the advertisers or the consumer's need and say, what do, you know, not what am I trying to sell, but what do you need and how can we serve that need?
If you think back a couple of years ago, we were all talking how banner ads were going to kill our business, and how are they doing so far? How many banner ads have you looked at in the last year? The reality is people are still looking for ways to break through the clutter. And I think magazines and the programs we create do that. You want to buy programmatic and you want to be next to all sorts of ads, that's fine. But you're also going to want a portion of your advertising to reach consumers in a unique way. And I think magazines still have the ability to do that, to create special programs, to create great content, to wrap it around, and to really make a distinction for those brands. Because at the end of the day, brands count. You can always buy tonnage, but really good messages break through the clutter and make consumers interact. And I think that's what magazines are good at.
And this is the promise of all the native advertising, which dominated the discussion yesterday. The machines are going to buy a lot of the inventory that can be bought by machines, but it's the role of all of us in terms of creating more engaging ad formats. And there's lots of discussion about blurring of lines and breaking of orthodoxies, but it's very important when it's done well. It's better for the advertiser, it's better for the whole product. And so I think you're going to find a bifurcated world. The high-value things will go through native, and a lot the rest will go through programmatic.
Yeah, I'll say that I think magazines are the original native advertising, because I think, you know, anyone that's been involved in any editorial research or focus groups, when you take consumers and you give them magazines and you ask them unaided to tell you what the best editorial is, a vast majority of them point to ads. They think the ads are content.
It hurts a little bit when you say that.
No, but it's true. It's part of the content of what they're looking at. I mean, I think someone talked about that yesterday. If you stripped out all of the fashion ads out of the fashion titles, what would you have left? That's part of the content. It's part of the experience and the engagement.
And the noise is going to get worse with time. So I think we're going to be back here 5 years from now. We're going to be talking about the biggest thing that moves the needle of big programs that are cross-platform, that make a difference, that consumers trust, advertisers that help them build brands and sell products. Those are going to be the things 5 years from now that are going to matter, because the clutter and the messaging and all the things in the ad market are just going to get more noisy.
A while ago, I think it was about a month ago, Business Week called me and said, Bloomberg Business Week called me and said, we cut a deal with Hank Paulson to do long-form video documentary. We commissioned this Academy Award-winning director to do it, and oh, by the way, we sold it to Netflix. I was like, God, that's cool. And I brought it to work and said, told my editor about it, and he said, A, yes, you should do a story about that. That's really cool. And B, why the fuck didn't we do that? What is wrong with us that they stole the march on us, and what is it about us? And I know my ultimate boss, Jill Abramson, was asking some significant questions about that. And part of what makes me think about that is I'm going to interview Shane Smith from Vice next Wednesday in Dublin, and you know, he's a former welfare scammer from Montreal, came in with a rather spicy little magazine, and they started doing some crappy little videos and messing around on the web and building out early native content for advertisers. And the next thing you know, they got a partnership with HBO, and I'm seeing valuations for the company in excess of $1 billion. So what I'd say is, why the F isn't that you?
Well, I mean, we're totally invested. We've launched the whole business, the entertainment business, the Kindness Entertainment, and we're highly bullish on this whole marketplace. I mean, I think Shane has done a great job of building that business. He's got 1 billion views, you know, at some time into it. I've now just started in 5 months. I have 300 million views in a digital business. We're out looking at TV shows, and already made some announcements in this thing. So we're all sort of have our own strategies in how we do this, but it is a high potential business, and I think it's really in the wheelhouse for us, and you know, all tied to our access, our brands, and really finding the right talent to execute against
Yeah,
that.
but you understand my question is, why is it him and not you guys?
Because I think
You got it.
each media type, you know, whether it's video or film or books or magazines, has a different DNA and a different kind of skill set in how it's created and how to tell the story. And I think, you know, if anything, we probably need to do a better job of bringing in people who really know those spaces and have that DNA into our own orbit and incorporate them into what we do. And I think that's why, you know, why we don't see it, because we're not thinking, you know, we haven't been raised in those industries, and we don't know, you know, the magic formula for what makes a good film or what makes a good TV show. But that's something you can acquire, you can hire, you can learn, but you have to be open to that. And so I think we're all, in our ways, trying to do that.
And the reality is, at Time Inc., we already did that. We started HBO. We bought Turner. We bought the studio. We did all those things with our cash flows. Unfortunately, now we're the magazine division of Time Warner.
And they want to spin you off. That
Well,
sounds ungrateful.
That's be the best damn
hurts.
thing that ever happened to us, because we're going to go out and do it all over again.
Yeah.
We have those opportunities now to be independent again. When we wanted to do video before, we had to talk to HBO. If we wanted to do digital before, somebody else did that. We will be independent now. We get to do it all
Back
over
when you
again.
were one company, you called it Synergy, and it was beautiful. Oh.
Synergy at Time Warner is an elusive word.
Well said, sir.
Sorry, it's often more easy to work with somebody else than it is to work with a sister company, because the companies just run very independently. But our cash flows funded all those things. The beauty about being independent again, we get to do it all over again with the great content we have, and really, I think, can invest and grow the company again.
David, you know, companies like Vice are good because they break out, and whether they're the same valuation 5 years from now, we'll see what Rupert Murdoch has to say then. But they're good to pace ourselves against the amount of risks we take, and I think that's the key thing. And sometimes the orthodoxies, the rule books of the magazine business are a little too long, and you can admire Vice for going in lots of different directions. Last week we had in the Hearst Tower a magazine up front, kind of patterned after what the TV networks do. It was fantastic, and we had 30 big content ideas, and the notion of it was
But
kind of...
I just want to ask about that one sec. How can upfronts are built on limited inventory,
Yeah.
aren't they?
They are, and
And
so a lot...
once it's sold, it's gone. Whereas in magazines, you can always print more pages.
Well,
right?
but that's a narrow view, thinking that the only thing we shared were magazine ideas, and so we shared a lot of programs that don't have unlimited inventory. New partnerships with William Morris Endeavor for Cosmo Live, 2 big conferences, one against the Hispanic population and one in New York around young women. Our new partnership with DreamWorks and Awesomeness TV for a YouTube channel, rolling up tens of thousands of contributors with these multi-channel networks, because for teens, YouTube is their set-top box. They don't watch the TV that potentially we watch. And so all these things that are happening in the broader ecosystem, from the Jonah Perettis and the Shanes, push us to go further out on the limb. And if there used to be a time in the magazine business, you had 3 revenue streams, right? You had print revenue, subscription revenue, newsstand revenue. And for us to succeed, we need 6, 7, 8, 9. And some will be small and some will be big. And we like the models that are being set by these speedboats. We're blessed with the content, blessed with the assets. And if anything, maybe if we've been historically too conservative, I think our company or the whole industry is shedding that.
One thing I think about is ASME issued new guidelines around native advertising, right? Am I right? Well, you guys pay a lot of attention to ASME.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I'm wondering, so they want to look after the consumer and maintain the integrity of the brands and make sure that there's a good, nice, firm wall between editorial decisions and marketing decisions. Good, good, good. I don't think that Gawker, BuzzFeed, Vice is really going to be checking with those. So in that sense, you're fighting an asymmetric fight where you're up against people in your same space, more or less, who are not observing the same sort of rules.
Yeah, I don't think we can sacrifice our relationship with the consumers. I mean, that's what our brands are built upon. That's the lens that we look through. And everything else are guidelines that we get stretched on. And, I think print's probably trailing a little bit in what we're seeing in the new media space, but it's important for us to always look through that prism of what's right for the consumer. Now, on the digital side, like in all recipes, we actually allow advertisers to put branded recipes on there because it's a user-generated model. And we actually allow consumers to put in their own recipe. If they say, Philadelphia cream cheese, or they say Campbell's soup, mushroom soup, we allow that. But we don't add that into the content to doing that. So it's a little different, but hopefully this is not being taped. But our editors, we spend a lot of time looking at the ASME guidelines, and we're always kind of pushing them, but it's always through the lens of what's right for the consumer and the brand in the long term.
You can't confuse the consumer. It has to be clear. At the same time, I think there's a mistake to be made if we overregulate this space. The unregulated players will always beat the regulated players.
Well, and what I found is like social media has really broken down, the barriers. Editors have to be marketers, and and they have to be able to talk to customers in multiple ways. And but the most important thing that never changes is trust. You want to have trust with your customer. So that's the rule book. We play by.
Our editors are so capable of figuring this out. So we really lean on them. They created the bond that we have. They know where the line should be drawn. And I think what's tough is when you write policy, it's hard to understand exactly how that's going to play out. So, this is sort of a moving target a bit, but I think we got to count. Our editors are, they got us here. They're going to get us there. They know what we need to be doing to maintain that relationship.
We've been creating custom content for years. We have a division that has over 125 people working for it. It's up over 300% in the last 3 years in revenues. So it's doing quite well. We've always created custom content for advertisers, and there's a clear distinction. As has been said before, we're not going to violate our relationship with our readers. The one thing I think where we can stretch, in the past we've been reluctant to sell those things we talk about, and yet that's not true anywhere else on the web. Many readers think of that as a service. So the ability to click, if we talk about a product and say, click on this, buy it, there's nothing really wrong with that. We've got to be very careful. We've got to make sure the consumers understand what we're doing. But I think the commerce applications for what we do is incredible. And as we still look at that and move forward, there's going to be a lot more opportunity for all of us to share in that dialogue and share in those revenue streams that are being captured by other people right now on the web.
Well, and that's why we launched Rodales.com, is to really, experiment and, get our feet wet in that commerce space, with a brand that doesn't have an editorial component to it at this point. So.
I think you guys have done a really good job of sort of mixing pragmatism and optimism. They've done a good job, yes? If I'm sitting out there, I'm sort of reassured by my leadership, and I'm thinking, these guys know where we're going. We'll be fine, won't we? We'll be fine. It'll be good. But then I start to think, but maybe the skill sets required, that the workforces that they want really isn't me. That what brought me to the table in terms of being a brilliant magazine maker, and as you say, it's baked into your editors, Bob. They know what to do, but they think to themselves, well, if I got to worry about what's happening 4 months from now, in 4 hours from now, I'm not sure that's my wheelhouse. And maybe you'll go to that bright future, but maybe I'm not coming with you.
You know, one of the best business decisions we ever made was to integrate all of the digital development in with our brands. And we did this 3 years ago when I started, and everybody hold their ears, we were not prepared. We did not have everybody with all the skills in the right place. There was a ton of learning that had to be happened.
Well, that's because Newhouse had screwed up the digital stuff so bad in the past.
Thank you for that shot. I really appreciate it.
But
I'm
it's
feeling
true.
really good about our position right now because now it's all fixed. But my point is that we had to do it. We had to make that pivot. We had to start getting this put in place, and we had to think about how we were going to, change the composition of the workforce, train our people. We have a big digital learning conference next week at Condé Nast all week long. We hadn't done that in the past. All of these things, we have to get there because there was no simple way like you could just wave a wand and have digital literacy sent through this amazingly great company that we have. So I think that, it is very fair to say that, the future is going to be very different. The best thing that we can do as leaders is to clearly describe that to our people, give them opportunities to learn more, and to encourage them to make the changes they have to make in their businesses with their people to get the job done.
And David, they're eager to do it. And so we've been putting a big focus behind training and development. And you're exactly right that, our monthly magazines are starting to lay out their March issues and to shoot them at the same time thinking about what's going to be up on the web at, 9 o'clock. But it'll be fantastic once we get through this process and people have those skills. They have that long form narrative skill along with that short form. And it's going to require us to have some patience and potentially to have larger staffs for a period of time. But we're going to get there, and these are going to be fantastic jobs for individuals.
Yeah, but one of your strategies is to bring somebody in from the guy from Say Media. What is his name?
Troy Young.
It's like, okay, here's a box of grenades. Go in there and let's see what's. I mean, your strategy is to shake it up from the top.
Yeah, I think that what we like about the nimble startups is a sense of impatience, that we want to get it done in the next 2 weeks, not the next 2 months. And I think that that's what Troy's job is to accelerate all the momentum that we have. And we've already seen significant benefits. The sites that we've started to redesign are up in engagement, up in traffic, and then lots of special things will happen in the first quarter of next year. You'll really see the strategy come home.
In some respects, because our companies all got so large, we became a little complacent. We didn't move as quickly. The one thing you learn, I've spent most of my career in larger corporations, including Time Warner when it was $38 billion. And then when you go out in the private equity field, you see how much quicker people can move. There's a sense of urgency there. There's a sense of we'll just try it, and if it doesn't work, we'll go the other way. All too often in a major corporation, it's, well, let's do a deck on it. Let's have a meeting on how to plan the meeting. Let's think about how we can do things. We've all got to create a sense of urgency in our organizations to move faster, quicker, smarter, and if it doesn't work, so what, we'll try something else.
Yeah,
One of the things that I'm really happiest about is that Rodale resisted the whole, you got to have scale, thing that happened over the last 10 years. And, because we didn't fall into that, we actually are a lot more nimble, and we are a lot more integrated and collaborative, and it makes it a lot easier to get things done quickly. So
I do think reverse engineering. I was talking to somebody, and our company has had some success in digital realms and have made our share of mistakes as well, Bob. But as somebody who came from a little startup, and we're all out grabbing innovation and trying to bolt it into our companies. But she just looked at me and she said, stuff we used to take care of at my old shop in an email, you guys have 4 meetings about. And it just, it blows my mind. I just wanted to work through. If I go to Q&As, are you guys going to have some cues? What are you sensing from that room? Are you guys going to ask questions, or should I just keep going? Whoa. Where's
They'll
Oprah?
they'll ask some questions.
Where's Oprah when you need her? Just go down there and just go for it. I am going to go to questions. I don't care. Go ahead, sir. Wait, though. Do we have mics? Are we doing on time? Oh, I went a little early.
I can scream.
All right, please do.
David, you discussed trend analysis. You discussed trend analysis and the direction that newsstand is going in and the directions that subs are going in. David has made a tremendous effort to increase digital subscriptions. I'm wondering at what point, when digital subscriptions will be 50% of the business, as opposed to the minuscule part it is now, but the trend is it's growing. Where do you see us? Will we reach 50% anytime soon?
I don't think we're going to get to 50% anytime soon. That would be a huge economic boon to our companies. We've set a goal of 10% by 2016. And then now we're 3.5%. The first million units we had, I don't want to say came easy, but came very organically. People who navigated through the storefront experience, which would be kind of confusing across all the platforms. We're now adding to our teams in terms of outbound marketing and to make sure that we have all the tools we use with our ink on paper subscriptions to have for our digital subscriptions. So our goal is 3 million by 2016, and the business starts to get much healthier because the digital subscribers, as we know, have high engagement. They pay generally higher prices, $19.99. I think all of us are looking at 70% plus renewal rates for those subscriptions. Pretty good business for us. If we can continue to grow a few points a year, that'll be really, really important for our P&Ls.
Yeah, our numbers were almost exactly the same. 2 years ago, we had to set a target because we had to put together a deck for somebody, of course. But we put together it was a 10% number.
That is a way of focusing the mind.
Yeah, exactly. But we agree. Listen, these people are going to decide how they want to consume the content, and I think we've got to wait for them. As the adoption of tablets have increased, people just haven't come along. And maybe it's our genre of magazines at Meredith, but we're in the same percentage, between 2 and 3%, and we set a target about 10%. The big opportunity is the cost avoidance opportunity. So you have to remember that for every 2% of subs that switch from print to digital, we save $5 million. So you can do the math. It's a huge opportunity for us to get people to do that, or take print and digital, and we can charge them more in a bundle.
I also think there's a real opportunity in the subscription business because we have so many great subscription relationships to really price up in those markets. Digital gives us that opportunity. I mean, people, if you buy the magazine, it's north of $100 for a subscription. If you buy our high-end digital product with the club that we talked about this morning, it's $200. So there's a real opportunity in those markets, I think, with subscriber relationships with customers to say, what more can we bring you? What more value can we bring to the table? So it's not only digital editions of the magazine, it's not only PDF files, it's a whole engaging relationship with that consumer where there's an opportunity for us to bring more value to the equation and raise pricing.
The power too of taking those bundles, which we're all getting better renewal rates and charging more, and pointing it to one-click buyers, which is why I did this deal with Amazon, is that it is so simple. You're getting into our content and boom, you're in. So the more that we can, I think our long-term strategy is how do we get this content as light as we can through the cloud, hopefully, distributed very broadly in a very simple way that someone can, through a fingerprint or some other form, unlock it and enjoy the content on a very frequent basis. So we are at the early stages of developing our products for what consumers are going to need long term.
One of the things I wonder about when it comes to digital subs is, like, if you see me on the airplane with this, what do you know about me? You know that I have $500 to buy one. That's all you know. Or maybe someone gave it to me. Apple actually gave me this. But anyways, there's no intellectual jewelry aspect to it. You can't tell that I'm an Esquire dude or I'm a GQ dude. You can't. There's no signaling that goes with it. It doesn't market like, you can't say to the person next to you on your airplane unless you really want to be a snoop. What are you reading on your iPad? The other thing that I worry about is if this, let's say all your magazines collectively were on my nightstand here. It doesn't say to me, read me. It doesn't guilt me. It doesn't look at me. When I see the New Yorker on my nightstand stacking up, I feel like a schmuck because I haven't read it. And I think that its physical ability to goad me into reading, or that if Runner's World is sitting there and I see the cover, I can at least say, you haven't run the length of your body in a year. That physical objects have a way of pulling you in and reminding you that in a way that this does not. This is opaque.
Well, I think also, what we as an industry don't acknowledge as much as we should or could is that, we're on those devices all day, all day for work, whenever we're communicating with our family members, we're on those all the time. And a magazine or, a book in print is a nice break, and it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And that's why I think, the magazines that are really, getting more visual and more sensual are actually doing better right now. Because, if you have the answer, you need the answer to a question right away, you'll go online and get it. But if you just want a break, which, sometimes we do, then a magazine is awesome.
I think it's an excellent challenge, though. I really do, because I think the
You
best,
know what I mean, right?
the best digital businesses take analog behavior and make it better. Like your stack. So we have not gotten to the stack. You'll see some of that in what's coming from the Amazon's new storefronts, et cetera, that they've started to create that. But I think it's an important challenge for us to recognize the things that make magazines great. It's the stack, it's the covers, it's the immediacy, it's the impulse, all the things that we've learned. We still have work to bring that home and have that all come together in our digital offerings. And unfortunately, one thing you should do is you should get Next Issue Media, because that'll be, all the magazines will be there and you can enjoy that.
Yeah, but if they're sitting under the cover.
Well, but my point is, I take it as a challenge because we have to get better at that.
The other thing, David, I think is talk to your kids. They don't feel that way at all. And I think the reality for all of us, I remember when HBO first started, the view of the world was that it was going to destroy the theatrical distribution system. How could we ever let this happen? And the only thing that's happened is we're watching more and more video than we ever have before. So what we're talking about now is not replacing print. Print will be around for the next 25 years, guarantee. The reality is our customers are moving to other devices. Look at this room. Everyone's on some sort of a device. While we're talking, they're multitasking. It's important for us is to reach the audiences with the great content we have, however they want to consume it. And that's, I think, what we're talking about as an industry. Taking the content we produce and putting it on multiple platforms and reaching those consumers in a way while they're multitasking, while they're watching TV, working on their iPhone, and reading the magazine at the same time. And I think that's the opportunity for us to really reach people in much broader ways than we have before.
But in a way that each media works best, not just like, putting a magazine on all the devices, but really
the interesting part about the
understanding
web,
that DNA.
we all have magazines that accumulate readers of particular interest. I have a magazine in the UK called Horse and Hound. You don't get that right over here, but if you were in Horse and Hound information in the UK, you get that magazine, you love that magazine. You find me now, I can interact with you, I can bring things to you, I can bring opportunities to you about events and meetings and opportunities for commerce. There's such a way for us to use the great content we have to bring more to our consumers, because the one thing we've learned over the years is the more great content you bring to consumers, the more they consume. It's the only thing that's been true about media over the last couple of years. We're all consuming more than we ever thought we ever would, much more beyond those 5 channels we get for free.
David, the New York Times is a triumph of someone who I think has solved a lot of this. So it used to be you had a big, thick newspaper on your front doorstep that would provoke you to read it. And I know for me, I spend far more of my time reading the New York Times on that little bitty screen when I wake up, when I go to bed, on the train home. And so most of my interaction is because you've reformatted the product and made it valuable to work on an iPhone screen. And I think that's important for all of us as we think about our products. One thing you mentioned about not knowing the individuals, I think one of the great surprises through the iTunes experience through iOS has been At the time when Apple was rolling out the subscription option and people could opt in to share their data, and we were thinking 10%, 15%, it's 65% for some, it's more. And so we actually are getting a lot of data that we can map against the rest of our data universe to know, is this someone we've previously had a subscription relationship with? So we're actually learning much more about these individuals than I think you give us credit
When
for.
I wrote about when Apple was first getting into the magazine business with tablets, I was saying, well, Apple wants to keep the data. This will never work out. Time Inc.'s got these great relationships with, you know, they have these lists that they're able, and I just said, there's no way this ever gonna work. And my phone rang late at night, and at my home, and it said, could you hold for Steve Jobs, please? And I said, yes, I can. And he just started talking right when he got out. He said, how much information do these magazine companies have about their newsstand customers?
Yeah.
How much do they know about them? And yet, they've had a really good business on the newsstand for a long, long time that has led into their business. So in a sense,
So that's why he said that and called it the next day.
yes.
They did banged us. You helped them.
Yeah, he called and he was rather specific in his criticism of what I had written, rather somewhat detailed. But we had what the State Department would call a very candid discussion. I'm interested when we talk about sort of how things show up on here. Do any of you do business with Flipboard? I should know this.
Yes.
We do.
Okay, so are they your friend or your enemy? They've showed a way forward, right, in terms of presentation.
It's a different type of content. So we don't serve our core magazine content through the Flipboard channel. We serve mostly things we have on the web. And for us, we really use it as an onboarding experience to sell, again, paid digital, because it's often consumed on an iPad and now on an iPhone. And so we think it's a really productive source for us. And so it's not the magazine experience. Now, it may be the fact that you flip pages, it is, but the content we serve up is not, you know, the jewel, if you will, that we charge for. And so we are very happy with that. And we have a lot of advertiser demand for our Flipboard experience. So we opt on the side of friend.
Flipboard?
Friend.
Friend.
You know, clever, interesting. You know, I don't know that they're going to be. You know, we're partners with them and a couple brands, generating revenues. You know, I think that how big it's going to be, I'm not sure, but I think he's very clever. Mike McHugh is a very talented guy, and they're doing a good job.
When I'll come out there for a question in a minute. Maria, when you talk about people after a day of being sort of screened up and you want a little me time, right? And that there's this brilliant, beautiful technology called the printed page that's totally searchable, has great resolution, is lush and beautiful to hold in your hand. I really don't see that as a native behavior to young people. I don't notice that. I don't see that in them. And
Well,
so,
I've got 3 kids, and of varying ages, 3 different decades actually, and all of them are on devices and love them, but all of them also really enjoy print, and it's a very different experience for them.
do you think it's got anything to do with the fact that they know that's how they get money for those devices?
No, and actually, let me clarify. My teenage daughter doesn't really read magazines in print. She doesn't read magazines in general.
You should ground her.
But she's a huge book reader, and she reads, so we're also in the book business, so that, I support that. But she reads books in any way, in any format, and, often in print, so.
Across all of our properties, we reach half of the 18 to 34-year-olds in the United States. So they're there, they're interacting with us. They still like rich stories and rich content. They're just consuming it differently, that's all.
I think the biggest benefit to young people is access. Like I remember, my older daughter gave me a Kindle, and I was like, yeah, whatever, I'm not going to read it. And then my teenager, who's too young to go to the bookstore, came in my room, and she's like, I wish there was a way to just get a new book to read in like 30 seconds. And I was like, here's my Kindle, and that's all it took. So, it's digital is great for when you want something right away and you need something right away. And that's a separate experience than, my People magazine coming on a Friday and like, don't interrupt me because I'm about to read it.
But David,
I'm totally the same way.
young girls' interest in fashion and beauty is very deep. Okay, the celebrity kind of complex in the United States is alive and well, and so when you're 16 and 17, you love these magazines, and that's on a broad basis. But these are still great passion reads. As I told you earlier, my 16-year-old daughter's obsessed with music and loves Rolling Stone. It's like one of the few media properties we actually have in common. And so they'll continue to pick those, but the core fashion and beauty industrial complex is alive and well.
And we do tracking studies in our database and in research, and this next group coming through actually has the most interest in actual behavior in print magazines. So it's the same, to David's point, it's a really good thing. And my hypothesis is they grew up in iTunes not worrying about clicking and paying small amounts of money for content. And I think they love our products and the visual aspects of them. So I feel bullish about that.
I've long felt that one of the crowning achievements of Apple is to create a place on the web that's capable of separating consumers from their money.
Absolutely.
I mean, and the idea that someday we will be seen as apps and that we will be seen as valuable, and the whole, if the seance about, information just wants to be free gets broken, I think Apple will have played a role in that. Maybe they didn't do it at a price point that we wanted, maybe they didn't do it, but they did create a marketplace where people are willing. And our challenge in some senses is to be one more button on the phone that people are willing to pay for. I pay for all sorts of buttons on my phone. Do you guys have a question? I have more if you want. Go ahead, sir.
So somebody mentioned earlier that advertising was a challenge because there's so many additional places for ad dollars to go. In fact, there's thousands of places, new places for ad dollars to go, and they're increasing all the time. And I read somewhere that that YouTube, for example, actually now has more ad revenue than all of Time Inc., and it's growing at about 30% a year. So that is, against the fact that the total amount of marketing spend or ad spend across all media by advertisers is flat to down across U.S. and Europe, down in Europe, up a little bit in the U.S. So the math doesn't work long term, overall, not just magazines, but overall. And so the question is, you guys have really valuable content, which people love. Don't you eventually have to move to a model where you charge more for your content and rely less on advertising?
Well, I think you saw Nancy Weber, our CMO, start talking about our CRT, or Consumer Revenue Transformation. That's exactly what it is. So we're going through all this testing. We could be selling bundles, more of the club model that you would think about, or what can we bundle on since we have this relationship to get that consumer to give us more money. And we see that as a huge opportunity for us, and we're pivoting that way because we've actually taken the view that advertising is not going to be growing in the magazine business. We came to that realization pretty quickly. So how else are we going to run this business? We believe consolidation is a good thing for the business because costs need to come out of it, and we need to get the consumer, ramp up the consumer side of the business. Absolutely.
And what you see during recessions is advertising is hyper-cyclical, which we all felt in 2009. But the subscription businesses are rock steady in almost every way. Newspaper subscriptions, magazine subscriptions. And so the more we can stabilize that piece of our business model, the better off we are. Because economies expand and contract, and they have forever. And so it's a defensive move to be able to have a more secure base.
I think about I used to come to AM2C a lot when it was held like in Boca Raton or Bahamas. I can remember going fishing with Keith Kelly one year. It was just like the biggest chocolate factory in the world. Got to do whatever you want. And ice cream for everybody, as much whiskey as you wanted. And times are different now. And in the olden days, I think people would have looked at Maria or Tom and said, you guys, you're in publishing, but you're not in New York. All happens in New York. New York's where you want to make stuff. I don't think that's really true anymore. I do think that there's the sort of cost equation, New York versus London, New York versus Alabama, New York versus Iowa, New York versus Pennsylvania. Do you think that that some of the people in this audience should rent and not buy and be ready to fly out the door to because the model of Manhattan publishing, which is you're in a big tower, you get whatever you want, your expense account is of no consequence. That already went away, but maybe making a magazine from a big expensive glass tower in Midtown is not the way to go.
I think it really depends on what kind of magazines you do. I mean, we have a balance of New York and Pennsylvania, and but I often talk with the Men's Health guys who are primarily based in Pennsylvania. Is that that kind of grounds us to what people in the rest of the country are really experiencing, and it enables us to kind of relate to our readers in as much a peer-to-peer relationship. So that's a great benefit, but maybe for Vogue it's not as much of a benefit. So it really depends, I think, on what your brands are. But it's also it's great to have options and flexibility, and certainly costs are much more reasonable in Pennsylvania than they are in New York. So
There's a talent piece, and David, you mentioned Birmingham. We just announced we're moving Country Living to Birmingham in the first part of the year, and it was a function of we didn't think we could publish Country Living well in New York City. It was the wrong kind of environment. We wanted people to live that lifestyle and not to imagine living that lifestyle. The second is there's a huge amount of talent in the world if we're more open-minded, and we're way too New York based. The woman we hired as editor-in-chief is fantastic. Her husband is the managing editor for Gizmodo, part of the Nick Denton operation, and Nick's engineers are in Prague. And so I think this notion of you got to have all your talent in one place is very outdated.
Right.
And we have to go to wherever the talent is, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in Alabama, whether it's in Arkansas.
Well, let me first make clear we're not going to Des Moines anytime soon.
Neither are we.
Absolutely, positively
Absolutely
sure about
positive about that.
Okay, just checking.
But the reality is you can work from anywhere today.
Yeah.
And we're really thinking our own office strategy and how we think about our locations in New York. How can we accommodate the requests of people who actually don't want to come into Manhattan? And there's a lot of those who feel that way. So there's lots of opportunities because of technology. It has finally brought us the opportunity to work remotely. And you can create offices in other places where you can attract really great talent today. We just, in the last company I had, we opened up a great office in Austin, Texas, and had tremendous people flock to that operation, our marketing operations, our tech operations, and that was terrific. So I think all of us have the opportunity to rethink the opportunity for us to attract really high-quality people who don't necessarily want to live in Midtown Manhattan and pay the prices that it costs to be here.
And I mean, that's really one of the greatest benefits of this digital revolution is like we're all connected no matter where we are, and it makes it a lot easier to work and do our jobs, whether we're at home or in offices all over the world.
We love New York and big buildings.
And you're moving downtown.
That's where we're going downtown.
You're going downtown.
Exactly.
I mean, right now it's 4 Times Square, and then are you in the trades? Where are you going?
World Trade Center.
I think wherever Anna Wintour is actually its own economic zone. Pretty much.
No doubt.
It's all right. We're down to 1 minute. Let's just short answer. If you could wave a magic wand and change a single thing about your company or the people you work with or yourself, one thing that you could just, because what you talked about, Bob, which is you're in one room and you got to get to the other room.
Yeah.
Right now we're in that long, dark hallway. Best to hold hands, right?
Right.
And as you guys have on this panel. But if there's, no, you've been very nice to each other, and it's great and stuff. But if there's one thing you could change, either about the industry or your companies or your employees or yourself, what would it be? And just keep it kind of short.
Want to go faster.
Okay.
Less fear from my team in terms of trying new things.
I wish I was as smart as the people that work for me.
There you go.
Less email, more FaceTime together.
Nice.
The first 2 points, you know, our motto for our new products is fail fast. We need to bring out even more to the marketplace. We're not afraid of the risks. Speed.
I think these guys did a pretty darn good job, don't you? Thank you all for coming.